All right. Well, we'll get started. It's about 1:31. So again, we appreciate everyone who has joined us today. Welcome to Fueling for Performance. Thanks for tuning into the second bonus panel hosted with TrueSport. If you were with us for unpacking your mental game last week, welcome back. If you missed us for last week or any of the preceding weeks, you're able to find the recordings of the panels on our virtual events page, which I'll let you know about in just a minute. While we're waiting for a few more folks to join, we'll start with just a couple of housekeeping items. If you would like to ask a question or make a comment, find the control bar on, find the question and answer feature at the bottom of your screen. We ask that you submit questions through that question and answer feature rather than the chat, just so we're able to streamline it in one place. But by all means, if you'd like to use the chat to say hello, say where you're from, you're more than welcome to. There will be a question and answer opportunity with our athletes shortly, so we'll get to those questions. If we are not able to get to any questions, we'll make sure to follow up with you after the panel. And then lastly, we will be recording this panel, so you're able to access it at a later time and to share it with any of your community members as well. So as I mentioned just a few minutes earlier, Disabled Sports USA houses a virtual events page. If you're not familiar with it, this is a page that lists upcoming and past virtual events through the Adaptive Sports community, through the DSUSA membership network, and a variety of other organizations. If you go to www.disabledsportsusa.org, you can view what types of events are going on, when they're happening, what platform they're hosted through. We currently have over 150 events to look forward to. And in addition, you're welcome to submit your own organization's events for us to post as well, so we can share with our network. So real quick, Audrey and I will take a minute to introduce ourselves in case you're not yet familiar with us. We've been super excited about all of the engagement we've seen in the last few weeks. So if you aren't familiar, my name is Kayla Hamaker. I'm a training and education program specialist with Disabled Sports USA. At this time, we're really excited to be supporting our community of athletes, adaptive sport providers, coaches, the general sports community in staying safe, active, and connected. We've been really excited to have this now 5-part series with TrueSport and to take a deeper dive into what it really means to maintain these different goals and balances as we move forward and kind of transition into, become accustomed to being at home, but transition into a time period where there's a new normal.
And I'm Audrey. I am the TrueSport Outreach Education Lead, and we are super excited to be back again, especially with Kara and Mandy, who I'll let introduce themselves a little bit more here in a minute. But I just want to start out by saying thank you to everyone tuning in today. It's really because of your interest and excitement around the original webinar collaboration series we put together that both the DSUSA and TrueSport decided to add a few bonus webinars, including this one on Fueling for Performance. So sadly, this is the final webinar of this particular series, but man, oh man, did we save the last one for a fun conversation. So we are extremely grateful to have spent this time working side by side with the DSUSA and for the opportunity to hang out with the amazing community of listeners who have joined us week after week. As for TrueSport, for those of you who have not heard this part yet, we are an initiative of the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency that aims to create a more positive youth sport experience by empowering young athletes and educating and supporting parents and coaches on best practices for developing life skills and core values for young athletes both on and off the field. To our mission, the athlete voice is imperative, and we're incredibly fortunate to collaborate with Olympic, Paralympic, and Team USA athletes in a wide range of sports who are inherently TrueSport champions and have incredible stories to share. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and welcome our guest athletes. So today, as you all know, we are talking about Fueling for Performance, and who better to join us in this conversation than Team USA and Team Novo Nordisk track cyclist Mandy Marquardt and 3-time Olympian javelin thrower Kara Winger. Welcome to both of you, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Audrey.
So, both of your experiences with Fueling for performance, it's like a tongue twister, are as unique as the demands of your sports. And often, thanks to the wonderful world of social media, others have been able to experience firsthand how you both choose to feel through things like your Instagram stories. So to start out, I'd love to hear from both of you. Why is it important for you not only to share your sport-specific practices, but also to share how you're feeling your body? Whoever wants to start.
Kara, you go.
Okay. So I am an explosive power athlete. I'm Mandy's a sprinter, but my bursts of energy are even shorter than that on the track. And so I throw the javelin. It takes about 4 seconds per attempt in competition or in practice. So I'm looking for like quick bursts of energy. And maybe over a couple hours of practice, I also need to have a little bit of a slow burn. So the key there is consistency. It's not about like just immediately before practice getting something in your body. And while that can be important, it's also about planning your day so that you can have your best energy output when you're putting demands on your body. So that's why it's important to talk about the food component of how training goes as well. But I feel pretty lucky to have learned kind of the hard way that listening to my body is really the most important thing. So I'm not trying to eat like other athletes necessarily. I'm trying to eat like I have learned through trial and error what makes my body work the way that I need it to.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. What about you, Mandy?
Yeah, absolutely. So like Kara, I am a strength and power athlete. So I race on the velodrome. My events are really short and they're repeated too. So I have to make sure I'm fueling. And I also have type 1 diabetes. So wearing a continuous glucose monitor really helps me really see what I need to fuel. And also recovery is a big thing too, not just as an athlete, but also with me being type 1. And really, I think anybody that is, active, I think that's really important to look at what foods fit and work for you. I've learned through trial and error. I always travel with lunchbox, and it's just really important for me to have that recovery aspect of fueling for my performance.
Do you happen to have your lunchbox with you now?
Maybe.
Super secret lunchbox.
Travels the world with me. And I have a little snack. I have my protein shake. So
nice.
Just in case I get
nice. Well, speaking of snacks and all things delicious, do either of you have a favorite pre-competition meal or a go-to food for training?
Yeah. So, every athlete's different in how they prepare. I know a lot of people are like carb loading and doing that. But personally for me, also to keep a good blood sugar and to just, have a good night's sleep without any changes in my blood sugar, it's just important to have a big protein, more vegetables, salad, and I do a little bit of carb. And it's just fueling also throughout the day prior. And that's kind of just worked for me. And I'm happy.
Awesome.
Yeah. Again, with trial and error in college, I used to think like the only thing I'd ever heard about with athletes, I wasn't quite into my nutrition major at Purdue yet, but all I'd ever heard was like, you should eat carbs before you compete. Like, that's it. That was the only information I'd ever had. So I used to eat a giant plate of pasta like the night before a meet and then be tired and slow the next day. So again, through trial and error, like learning how my body best performs has been really helpful. And as far as day of competition, it's a little bit lighter. Like Mandy and I both, again, we're like looking to be explosive. So it's not necessarily like big meals that get you ready for that. It's kind of like snacking basically throughout the day. You're also nervous, so you maybe don't want to eat a ton. And yeah, we're both honey stinger athletes, and like they're prepackaged, like really simple, fast energy snacks are amazing. My absolute favorite are their energy chews. I consider myself a fruit snack connoisseur, and they're just the best I've ever had. So if I'm done warming up, that's like the last thing I'm going to put in my mouth, like before I'm actually on the runway, just a little extra energy before it's time to perform.
Nice. Yeah. And Mandy hooking it up with the visuals.
My mom's props.
So many props today. Yeah.
The snack bars are my favorite. Really. But yeah, I mean, they're awesome. I love them. So they're great little snacks, you know, in between training and when I'm feeling hungry, but I use them mostly around my training. And yeah, it's hard to eat around competition too. So it's kind of keeping things lighter. So we stay explosive and that we're also recovering, and everybody also needs to stabilize their blood sugars too. You know, we want to avoid those dips and those highs. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it just to prepare.
Definitely. When I think, referencing trial and error as kind of your go-to approach when determining what to eat around those times is huge. Because like you said, Kara, the education athletes are provided throughout their athletic journey and potentially athletic career, if they end up taking it sort of to that next level, we aren't always provided with the full picture. Sometimes we're given snapshots, such as eating a giant bowl of pasta before we compete. And it just doesn't work for everyone. So definitely trial and error, solid advice, and makes the experience unique to the end user. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for sharing some insight into your personal practices and learning curves. Like Audrey said, it's super important to realize that nutrition is really independent to you and your body. And there's this misconception that it's a one size fits all. So it's great to hear from you that it, like Audrey said, it's been a trial and error process and you've figured out what works best for your bodies. Now we'd like to turn it over to the attendees. We'd love to hear from you. We know that hydration is super important to our daily health and to our athletic performance, but that it can also be difficult to be consistent with. So we'd love to hear how you monitor your intake, whether you drink at least 32 ounces of water a day, or you make sure that you're drinking at consistent intervals through the day. Maybe you just drink when you're thirsty. Or we know that several athletes use the method of checking the color of their urine to see if they're hydrated. So being more clear, meaning they're more hydrated. It'll take just a couple more seconds to fill that out and we'll share the results with our audience here. Some 5-second countdown. If you haven't voted yet, please feel free to submit your vote. We'd love to hear from you.
Speaking of that, I'm gonna take a drink because I'm thirsty.
Interesting. So we actually have a pretty even spread here. So the majority of people saying that they drink water at consistent intervals during the day, so kind of monitoring the time frame they're drinking in. Some people using the test of checking the color of their urine, and then a smaller amount making sure they drink at least 32 ounces a day, and then only 10% saying they drink water just when they're thirsty, which is good. Hydration is important, so glad to hear that most people are monitoring their hydration intake. As we move forward with the question and answer feature with our athletes, we'll keep those answers in mind and try to incorporate them into some of what both Mandy and Kara are able to share about their own personal hydration practices.
So kicking it back over to our athletes, I'm gonna start with a decently tough question, and one that comes up often when we discuss the concept of fueling and nutrition. And then we'll ease off a little bit, and then we'll dive back into some of the questions coming from our listeners. So prepare yourselves. My first question. There are a lot of athletes who look up to both of you, and the decisions they make for their sport can be based off of what they see you doing. Knowing that, and also knowing that as elite athletes, there's often additional social pressure to not only perform well, but to also conform to certain athletic appearance standards. What advice would you give to an athlete who may not be confident in their body and is therefore struggling to fuel properly?
That's such a good question.
Told you we're starting with a hard one.
If we can kind of make this a little bit of a conversation, definitely, it's hard, you're getting out of your comfort zone, and there is a lot of these stigmas around it. Like, just personally with diabetes, I've been told that I would never compete at a high level in my sport. I've also, I'd felt like maybe there's something wrong physically, like with my appearance or my diabetes, like that I was holding somebody back. But it's just knowing that the bike was always just what made me really happy, and that I knew where my passion was, and that I just grew more comfortable too in my own skin, and just how I viewed the sport and how it's molded my body. And it's been a journey.
For sure.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. And I've seen Mandy enough in person to like see that the attention to detail is what is important. It's not about the physical appearance necessarily. It's like the relationship of that to how the output like happens on the bike. And that's the same for me too. I tore my ACL in 2012, and I had spent about 2 years like trying to be leaner. I was really young. I didn't know that that wasn't going to apply to my throw or to my performance. And I just spent 2 seasons being really unhappy with how I was performing. I liked pictures, but I also didn't, because it wasn't showing up. Like, I wasn't happy with the distances that I was throwing. And then eventually, because I operated at such a deficit, I had this catastrophic injury. And I've said ever since that I've tried to eat for performance rather than physical appearance. And that was never more true than in 2019, when I finally hit the 200-pound mark as a female athlete. Like, I'd always been like 190, 192, 195 in like early preseason stuff. But March of last year, I hadn't weighed myself in a really long time, because I decided that it didn't matter. And I was surprised to see 200 pounds on the scale. But that was like intentional, again, like focused eating and lifting and stuff like that. And I got comments from people that said, are you lean right now? Like, are you lighter than normal? But actually, I was heavier than I had ever been. And that applied directly to the best international performances of my career at World Championships in 2019. So it can be hard to like make that decision and trust that it's going to pay off to like listen to your body rather than criticism from outside sources. And something I would say, like Audrey, your question was about how people can be more confident. Something that I did in track and field, like a lot of times the women that are performing, the uniform looks the same and people are super ripped, and that's just not me. So I didn't want to wear the short tights anymore, because that wasn't feel empowered and comfortable. And I could choose to wear long tights instead of the short tights, and like feel powerful and happy about like what I was wearing and how I looked, and just kind of take that into my own hands. So I would say that if you have that opportunity, don't be shy about like maybe looking a little bit different if it's something that makes you feel stronger and better able to perform.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's great advice, and really, again, it's that cueing back into how am I feeling, and, what makes me feel good in performing my sport, and how do I test out different, variations of what good can look like. So maybe it's trying to eat something a little heavier one time, and if that doesn't work, then maybe it's a little lighter and eating heavier a little bit earlier, whatever that is. But definitely exploring, that the concept, exactly what this is titled, fueling yourself to meet peak performance, as opposed to fueling yourself to meet some sort of aesthetic standard.
Yeah, and everything's in moderation too. Like, I treat myself to things here and there, especially like my honey stinger. Like, those are really good treats. But really, in general, I think it's having that like consistency, like Kara said, and in your nutrition, and just seeing that in your training. Like, I have a training that I know what I'm going to do for the next year, and there's different phases that, okay, I'm going to be sometimes leaner, a little bit heavier. It's like mine fluctuates too, and I just can't be discouraged by it, but just know and trust the process and my coach and the entire journey. So
definitely well, awesome. Okay. Whew, that was the hard one. All right, so Best practice, expert advice then has always been approach training from a food first mentality. So as athletes, what does food first approach to fueling your body mean to you?
Cook for yourself. That's part of it, like real food from the perimeter of the grocery store rather than prepackaged stuff. Like that's a big thing for me. I luckily married someone who's an incredible chef. So while I enjoy cooking, I also get the benefit of like eating the real food that he's making. Yeah, and food first just means like get your nutrition from food rather than from like pills and supplements. And you can do both if you need to, as long as you're being smart about it. But starting with food is the best practice, the best thing to do.
Yeah, for sure. I always have that food first approach, like where I'm getting all my nutrients. That's how I'm stabilizing my blood sugars and knowing that that's how, I'm recovering, getting the most out of that. But yes, I also do take supplements, and that's at my own will. And the biggest thing, I'm working with Clean Athlete, and I'm excited to be a sponsored athlete from them. I've always valued their products because they're NSF certified for sport. They're tested. They go through a lot of different points of like making sure that the product is clean, and that's the thing that I value, and it's really important to, when you look for a product, to make sure that it's clean and it's a product that you trust. And I'm really into, sometimes when traveling as well, like to get a little bit more protein, and it's hard when I'm on the go, so I have a little protein shake sometimes with me. I even put it too in some of my food. So you can get really creative with that to get an additional protein or additional nutrients as well.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that's solid advice, from the TrueSport perspective, being an initiative of the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, that NSF certified for sport, kind of stamp of approval for what's in the product and making sure it's clean and safe, and that the company is liable for what you're putting in your body as much as you are. It definitely means a lot to what we speak to. So thank you. All right, so we're going to open this up a little bit now. Invite some of those watching to ask some questions. We've already got a couple that have rolled in. So the first one looks like it goes to Mandy. So I know the answer to the first part, but I'm going to ask it verbatim. So they said, did you say you are type 2, and how do you keep your levels from dropping during competition?
So I have type 1 diabetes. So I'm dependent on insulin, and I check my blood sugars. Different from type 2 diabetes, that's more also lifestyle related, where my type 1 is more autoimmune. Kind of same, but different. There is no cure for my type 1 diabetes. But that answers that first question. And then you mentioned, how do I do that with sport?
How do you keep your levels from dropping? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned before, everything's trial and error. And even going through like my different phases of training, like, when I taper for an event, maybe I might require more insulin. But really that's where like food comes in, to making sure my blood sugars are stable, to really keeping check on, because I wear a continuous glucose monitor. I have it right on my phone, so I'm able to always track my blood sugars. It's just one thing that in the beginning, is that I kept a food log and how much insulin I gave myself and what I ate. And then through there, I learned a lot too. And also nerves just play a big role in that. Your cortisol level spikes, and then your blood sugars do rise. So there's a lot of factors and variables. So it's just logging and finding what works.
Definitely. All right, let's see. Kara, after practice, what do you suggest as a great post-workout snack?
Ooh, after practice, I tend to train, especially right now, kind of right in the middle of the day. So I have a little snack before practice. Usually it's a waffle with a LaCroix. I've been doing like a weird pairing thing. Like I'll have like an energy gel or a waffle, and then I love flavored seltzer water. I think water is really boring. Like, it's super important to be hydrated, but I do not enjoy just drinking water unless I'm actually training. So I buy flavored seltzer waters. And then it's fun to like pair a little snack with that hydration, like pre-training. And then after training, it's time for lunch typically, or like a mid-afternoon snack. So it's something more savory, like a quesadilla with chicken in it, and some sour cream for some extra fats with the cheese, or yeah, something more normal, like a sandwich with deli meats and cheese, and always mustard, no mayo, ew. And yeah, so like a normal lunch for me is usually my post-training fuel. And if it's later in the day, it might be more like carbohydrate based, like a chocolate milk thing a little more simple before like a bigger meal a couple hours later. It just depends on the day. Again, trial and error. I feel like we're not necessarily giving super solid advice, but that's what I've been doing: snack, train, meal, to really recover afterwards.
Nice. We keep coming back to it. It's the theme of the day: trial and error. People, trial and error. What about you, Mandy?
To detail. Yeah. Pay attention.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Mandy? After practice, what are you snacking on?
Definitely a protein shake right away, because like I have to change my gears, get my equipment all together, and head home. So it's kind of a little snack, so I'm not like starving and I'm then going for something really bad when I get home. So, but also a big thing is that I make more, so I have leftovers. So as soon as I get home, then I have like some leftovers, a little snack before dinner or lunch, depending when I train.
Nice. Yeah, making a little extra. That's really good advice. I think it helps when, I think about times I've come home after doing something sweaty and you're just raging with hunger, and the fridge is calling, and there are many choices. So having that ready to go meal is a great idea.
And revamping leftovers is the most fun thing. Like you have something from 3 different meals that you can throw all in the same frying pan and all of a sudden it's new. Like that's my favorite.
Sometimes the next day.
Yeah.
I'm not too big on like meal prepping, because I kind of want my food more fresh. And yeah, just even if it's like the next day, that's better. I prefer that as well. Yeah. And just mix it all.
Nice. All right, so there is a great question that relates to hydration, and I kind of want to expand on it just a little because I think there's some interesting things in here. So the question verbatim is, at last year's USATF championships, it was very hot and humid. How did you stay hydrated as well as fueled? And I think what I'd like to extend this question just beyond sort of the USATF championship boundaries is the idea that you guys travel and are in wildly different climates at all times: hot, cold, indoors, outdoors. So I think, it'd be interesting to hear how you look at your environment and determine what that means for your hydration and fueling.
Cool. Yeah. Des Moines at the end of July was really hot. I think plain water, if I'm not actually training, is not my favorite thing. So I like to, and in a really hot climate, it was also incredibly hot at World Championships in Doha, Qatar. Even though it was the beginning of October, like it was heat index, I think, of 120 like every day. Even when it's nighttime, like the sun is down, like I warmed up in separate clothes than my uniform because I was absolutely soaked through everything I was wearing before going into the stadium. So that starts before you get into that climate, right? Like you have to prepare and be hydrated before you even go outside, because you can't catch up if you're sweating buckets like I was in Des Moines and in Doha. So being smart about like staying in a temperature controlled environment as you're leading up to a big performance is really important. And when you're inside in the air conditioning, and you can be intentional about drinking water or LaCroix or even sport performance drinks like Powerade or Gatorade, can be really delicious when you're losing not only water but electrolytes as well, to get you prepared. So I actually tend to enjoy heat for performance. It helps me keep my muscles warm. In Colorado, I often struggle to stay warm because it's cold sometimes, but also really dry. So I'm not actively sweating most of the time. So to be in a climate like that, if I'm properly prepared, which I'm conscious of doing before I'm actually at the competition venue, I really like it for performance, for being ready.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I love performing when it's hot, but I compete a lot too when it's indoors. But to qualify for World Cups, we do race on velodromes that are outdoors, and it's in the summer and it's really hot and humid. And then I've had a race in Bolivia, like 9,000 feet at altitude. And there too, like I'm burning more calories too at higher the altitude I am. So it's like making sure I'm definitely, feeling better and more. And also if you're not into say like sports drinks or anything, there's also Electrolyte Tablets. Noon Hydration makes them, and they're awesome too. You just kind of put them in your water, and there's some flavor to it. And so yeah, you can kind of get creative too with your hydration, or mix half Gatorade, half water. I mean, I've done that too, just with me and my blood sugars, just to keep things more stable. But yeah, I mean, heat definitely is challenging, but it definitely comes more to like preparation and not like what you do in that moment.
Yeah, and Russ, my husband, he actually, for backpacking and stuff, just brings like little table salt packets to put in water, because it's the same thing, but it's like super light, easy to manage like the trash of it and stuff like that. So there's so many options out there that make hydration delicious.
Nice. I love it. Everybody's hydrated. So, Mandy, coming back to you in regards to type 1, we're being asked, have you tried a keto diet, and what was your experience in weight training?
Like how that experience affected that, or is that what they're asking, or separately?
It seems like it's separate. So have you tried the keto diet, and what was your experience in weight training?
I've read a lot about that, and everybody's kind of individual. So no, I haven't tried a keto diet. I'm kind of more sticking to things that I like adding more protein, and yes, doing a little bit less carbs during the evening, and having the carbohydrates more around my double sessions that I do throughout the day, or around a workout, to kind of look more for balance. So I'm not really one to follow my calorie intake or follow a certain specific diet. It's just kind of what fuels me and what my body feels good what I'm eating. Because there's certain things maybe that anybody's eaten, they're like, I don't really feel so good from that. So it's hard to kind of follow something specific. And I just stick to having that balance and adding more protein into my meals. As far as weight training goes, how do I do that with fueling and everything?
I think it's what has your experience been in weight training?
Yeah, so we're cyclists first, but a big part of cycling and building strength and power is that foundation in the gym. From the beginning when I started, because I came from an endurance background in cycling, so I specifically went to sprint cycling back in 2012. And so it's been like a progression. Strength doesn't just come out of nowhere. And also you got to be really, it's not like you're going to max out every week. You're not going to max out every month. It's important to have a structure in your training. So, I'm going through different phases right now. I'm on a 4-week block, and I'm building up to each phase. And then I have a deload week. So it's like a recovery week. So it's important to have those too, because then I'm just putting myself in a hole. And especially right now, I don't even know what I'm training for, but it's just mentally what it was continuing to keep me happy. And I love being in the gym too, because, you got to build it all around the strength, upper body, lower body. I mean, everything we do on the bike too is stability, core. I've done a lot of physical therapy. So I think that you just got to kind of look at what helps and what makes you feel good, and also to prevent any injuries.
Absolutely. Well, and for those who are curious, both Kara and Mandy very often share parts of their weightlifting routines or suggested warm-ups on their social media channels. So definitely be sure to check that out. So we have one final question, and then we're going to have to move on. And any questions that haven't been answered, we will be sure to address after the panel is over. And Kara, I'll let you kick this one off for me. The question is, prior to going to bed, is there something that you consume to help with recovery and muscle growth?
Short answer, no. That's more with like the structured meals that I have throughout the day. I'm not trying to squeeze anything in like right before I go to sleep. I enjoy tea, not necessarily sleepy time tea, but like anything that's kind of warm and comfortable and nice, because sleep is a huge part of not only like athletic recovery, but absorption of nutrients as well. So that just goes right into eating well and planning like throughout the day for performance, but also letting your body take advantage of those nutrients that you're putting into it. So tea, sometimes ice cream.
I have some right here.
There you go.
How about you, Mandy? Anything prior to bed?
I enjoy tea as well. I mean, before bed too, I take magnesium, vitamin D, just some extra supplements and stuff. But yeah, I pretty much make sure to looking at my blood sugars where I'm at with that. Like I don't want to go to bed with a low blood sugar because that could not end up really well. So, you know, I maybe eat like a little bit of yogurt or have like a little bit more protein. Like I've made these protein popsicles before. Really easy. You can make a smoothie and then put it in these like little container things in the freezer, and then it's like a popsicle, and it's great. Like you're having something, but yet like it's healthy and it's good. So I don't know. I just try to get a little bit creative so I don't get totally bored and sad that I'm like I can't eat anything. You know, before I don't know. It's just like I'm hungry a lot, so I try to go to bed not super full, but just that I'm like happy and looking forward to breakfast then in the morning.
Nice. Well, thank you both. I think before we kind of wrap things up, both athletes have a challenge that they would like to present.
Cool. Okay. So real quick, my challenge is add more protein throughout the day. Like I said, everything's trial and error. You know, I don't follow a specific keto diet or anything. I just feel like to what makes me happy and what makes me feel good on the bike. But my biggest thing is breakfast, and I do overnight oats. So yes, I do prepare that for the next day, or I can make that for 2-3 days. And you can screenshot the recipe, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. But really just creative with that. Mix everything so like the protein powder is not stuck on the bottom, because I've learned through that. But yeah, and then you can use anything, milk, unsweetened almond milk. I kind of keep it more high protein based, and although I'm getting the carbs, you know, from the oats, and I'm feeling fuller as well, too, longer fiber from the chia seeds and the fruit. So yeah, just get creative with it and start your day right.
Nice. Challenge accepted. And Kara's?
In this time of quarantine and hopefully what feels like extra time to kind of learn new things and stuff like that, get out of your comfort zone. I mentioned that my husband's a really good cook. I also enjoy the kitchen, but there are certain things that I'm not necessarily comfortable with. And one of those is actually cooking like meats and proteins. Like I'm not totally confident that I'm not going to give myself salmonella. So I'm trying to like learn and be more confident in that process. So this recipe is stir fry. So like an Asian style, kind of everything in one wok, in one saucepan. And that the other day looked like every leftover vegetable that was in the fridge, like broccoli, red, white, and green onions, cabbage that was like leftover from the week before, and just like absolutely anything we had just went into the pot with delicious udon noodles and just sliced up chicken. So, but that can look like anything. It can be pork, it could be beef, it could be like whatever you have, just with different spices in it. So I'm just really enjoying trying new stuff. And Mandy, I added cottage cheese to pancakes the other day, and it was also amazing. So extra protein at breakfast.
You gotta send me this recipe. I'm gonna try it. Anything else that like I'm kind of simple. I like quick meals too, so all about it.
Same.
Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing those recipes. I am super excited to try them out as well. And Kara, would love for you to share that lemon ricotta pancake recipe with us as well, so we can share with our audience. Just to summarize some of the points that Kara and Mandy went over, the phrase of the day has been trial and error. Remember that nutrition is unique to you. You have to figure out what works best for yourself. Another key point was to hydrate. As we say sometimes in our office and amongst my friends, hydration never takes a vacation. You, as Kara and Mandy spoke to, you really have to plan ahead of time. They mentioned with their performance that they were hydrated prior to even leaving the house, knowing that they wouldn't be able to catch up after the fact, but need to be prepared. Focus on fuel, not body image. And at this time, get outside of your comfort zone. One of the things we've done here is engaging in a chopped challenge, where you can take a couple of ingredients and then make something crazy out of it, kind of like what Kara was saying with leftovers in your fridge. But anyways, focus on what really makes you feel good. And thank you to Kara and Mandy for sharing how you have focused on that, and how the thought and consideration you put into your day-to-day training and performances.
Absolutely.
So if you are looking for more resources about what you can get involved in, information about wellness, how to become a TrueSport, and locating your local DSUSA chapter, you can check out these links.
And to follow up, thank you again for joining us to learn more about fueling for performance. We hope that you'll stay connected with both DSUSA and TrueSport and our athletes here today through some of the resources on the page before, as well as engaging in these social media handles listed here. We encourage you again to engage with our Adapt at Home challenge. Show us how you're adapting at home, whether that's through physical activity, through cooking, through nutrition, whatever you'd like. We'd love to hear it. So thank you again, Kara and Mandy, for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it, and it's been great to learn about what goes into all of your performance and your training. It's exciting to learn and to hear different tips and tricks of the trade. Again, we will be recording this session, so we'll post it to our virtual events page after the session. We'll follow up with an email, and feel free to send with your community members. And finally, I'd just like to thank Audrey for this wonderful partnership with TrueSport. We've really enjoyed this now 5-part series and have loved engaging with your TrueSport ambassadors and the experience as a whole. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. It's been awesome.
Thank you, Kayla and Audrey. Good to see you,
Thank
Kara.
you. Thank you, guys. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.